welcome, and have the pleasure of having author Cynthia Ruchti with us today. Cynthia, thank you for talking to me again. We talked about 2 years ago. I just think you're an inspirational person.
Oh, thank you.
I enjoyed Cynthia, when I got to meet her last time, we were at the Mississippi River Readers conference or event, and you spoke there, and I'm like, you have a gift.
Oh.
So thank you for sharing that with all of us. You have many gifts, actually. You're an author, speaker, agent, book agent, or author agent.
Someone should tell this woman to slow down. I don't know. I enjoy everything that I do, and I enjoy the opportunities that I've been given, and I love making sure that I'm making the most of every opportunity.
Wow, well, you are. Last time we talked about the book Spouse in the House, and what a delightful book. And as I was listening to it, and you do not have to have your spouse home all the time to find some good nuggets in this book.
So, as you know, what the subtitle is Rearranging Our Attitudes to Make Room for One Another. And even though Becky Malby, my co-author, and I had originally thought that it was for people who had their spouse at home, perhaps in retirement, then as we got writing, we realized, it went much farther than that. It went into rearranging our attitudes when they're gone from the house all day and they come back home, or with our children, or college roommates, or any time that we're in tight quarters with someone, or in even a meeting for longer than we want to be, realizing that the walls feel like they're closing in, or the space seems like it's getting too small, and making intentional choices about how we respond in situations like that is part of what's going to make the difference between whether we survive it or we don't, or we live lives that are more on an even keel rather than way high and way low in relationships. So yes, you're right, far more. If there's no spouse in the house, Spouse in the House is still an interesting book to read, and part of its appeal, I think, is that it draws on the play of humor also.
I was going to mention that. It is just so fun to, I listened to it, and I just had a smile on my face. I love the wittiness and just the way you wrote it. And
Becky and I have a relationship as girlfriends, best friends, and have had for a long time, and the humor in that best friend relationship showed up in the book. There would be times when Becky would say something incredibly wise in the book, and I could come in and say, well, that works fine at your house, but at my house that's not at all going to work out. And we could bring in the stories that at one time didn't seem funny, but then looking back on it, we could see the humor in it. I have to say, in my own relationship with my husband, whom I've been with for many decades now, that
your Sith. That's
Sith, my spouse in the house, Sith. That reclaiming the humor, or finding the humor that we might have lost in certain situations, has made a huge difference in the way we approach one another. And when after decades you think, we've got this made, we've got it figured out. But no, as you age, or as you've been together for a long time, some of the things that used to be just quirky now become irritations. So what are we going to do about that? And reclaiming or refinding that humor, it's got to be there somewhere, has often made a huge difference in our ability to be able to cope with whatever the situation is.
One of the nuggets I took out was walking into your house and looking at different rooms, different spaces through your spouse's eyes. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is not his house. This is my house. Yeah.
That's very insightful. But for us too, as we were thinking about that, there are some houses that you walk into and you know that maybe the man had a stronger influence. We're not going to have frilly things, or we're not going to have your favorite color, we're going to have my favorite color. Or as women, our natural tendencies wanting to create the home that we envisioned or that we dreamed of. Even if we have to do that on a Goodwill budget, or we're creating a nest. It's not that that's stereotypical. There's something within us that loves to create a nest, whether it's our dorm room or it's our office space out in the workforce or wherever that is. But if we create the nest only for our own tastes, or only with our own interests on display, when other people walk into our home too, not just our husband, but when other people walk into the home too, they'll know then, oh, this was a space that was created for me, as opposed to this was a space created for us. So in our house, the way we work that out is there are certain spots that I've had free reign to decorate however I want, whatever I want to do. I used to be a collector, now I'm more minimalist, which is weird. My husband loves fish on the wall and deer heads on the wall and calls that decor and loves leather. So we decided that the family room where the television is, that would be the domain that reflects his personality the most. And then the sunroom is the place that reflects my personality the most. Then some of the other rooms where we're all together, we're giving a nod to one another's interests or tastes in them. There are certain things like I'm not real fond if he puts his fishing bucket or the minnow bucket on top of the refrigerator in the kitchen. So that's one of my personal private things, but because he cares about me, he'll put it out in the garage instead of that. But that is an interesting insight. Others have commented on that before too, because we do have a tendency, any one of us, to create an atmosphere that makes us the most comfortable or speaks to what we're interested in. Good thing Bill loves books. Good thing my husband loves books, because there are lots of them in the home. But I do have to be sensitive to the fact that if I want to keep our attitudes healthy toward one another, I have to be sensitive to the fact that if I'm stacking books on top of his fishing equipment, that's not going to work so well. We'll get rid of a few books to keep the peace. Yes. Keeping the peace is not always giving in. Keeping the peace is often finding a common ground where both of us can win.
That's very good. Very good. Okay, so I saw a little peek of a new book you have coming out in your lap there, and you've written it with the same Becky.
Yes, so interestingly.
Are we going to find some similar humor in here? Now, I am very interested in this. Tell us about this book.
So this book is it's part of the Love's a Mystery series with Guideposts. Guideposts has fiction projects that a lot of people don't know about, but they have a wonderful kind of a subscription method where people can get book after book after book in a series on different topics. So they wanted to do a 13-book series of novels that were Love's a Mystery in, and then the name of the town would be something that was either uncomfortable or scary or dangerous or mysterious or quirky. And Becky and I chose to write on Love's a Mystery in Embarrass, Wisconsin. There's also an Embarrass, Minnesota, which also shows up in the book, but I cannot tell you how or where. But the concept of it was that Becky wrote the first novella in this collection of two. The first novella, the historical side of things that were happening in Embarrass, Wisconsin, back when it was logging industry and logging camps and a mystery with someone who came from France and all kinds of interesting touches that way. And then I wrote the contemporary version. So it's romantic, comedic, historical, contemporary, all in the same book, and then with little threads of faith woven in as well.
Awesome. And then you have another book here. What's this one?
This is Facing the Dawn. This came out from Revell a couple of years ago.
And is this fiction?
This is fiction.
And
this is fiction as well. Yes. So I do write both fiction and nonfiction, which is a little uncommon, but I had written for radio for for 33 years writing fictional pieces and nonfiction pieces, so that made it a much smoother jump than it would be for the average author to do. But Facing the Dawn is the story of a woman whose husband is doing humanitarian efforts over in Uganda and left her at home with the 3 delinquent children, and she's carrying a lot of weight on her shoulders with keeping things running and going while he's becoming famous out there for his humanitarian efforts. She bumps up against a tremendous deep grief in her life, and then it gets worse, and then it gets worse. So much of the story is centered around the idea of how do we navigate a grief that seems incomprehensibly painful, and the role of forever friends in that process too. So it's a book. One of my sayings lately is that if there's no crying, is it really a book? Or if there are no tears, is it really a book? But so it's a heavier book to read, but there's hope within the pages, and humor also shows up in it too. Not in the forefront, but in the background, as it often does in family relationships, friendships, and even in times of grief.
Yeah. So you, like we said at the beginning, are also an agent.
Mm-hmm.
So what advice can you give some wannabe authors, budding authors?
I had a conversation like that just this morning too with someone who is a budding author who in some ways could have felt like she wasn't successful because she hasn't been published yet. But the true value is in the writing and the writing and the writing and the writing. So much of what we learn as a new writer is in the process of the writing. I also advise get yourself to the best writers conference that you can find. There's so much that you'll learn there about what you don't know and about how to fill in the gaps with what you do and you don't know in regard to that.
What happens at a writers conference?
That's a great question. So most of the time at a writers conference, there's that element of the gathering together and the networking with other authors, with industry guests, with agents and editors. But there are often classes and workshops that will specifically address a particular need, like point of view or show don't tell, or some of these, or plotting or not plotting, and some of these things that we talk about often when you've been in the industry for a while. Those subjects are going to come up. Very often there are opportunities to talk directly to agents or editors so that you can get a feel for what are they really looking for and how can I align what I'm doing with something that will allow me to break through into the industry. But it's also helpful in learning about relating to readers and what the readers are looking for and what they're not looking for. We love to hear from readers because it really does help form what we're going to write next. So as an agent, I often end a note, an email to prospective clients or just to aspiring writers with write as hard as you can and wait as hard as you can, because you're going to need both if you want to be a good writer.
Wow. It's just a privilege to talk with you and to hear the wisdom that you have. I've been fortunate to be able to spend some time with all of these authors, and just listening to you all is a gift and a privilege, and I just think you're a very special person. So it's an honor to be talking with you. And
Raina, I feel the same way about talking to you too. Thank you.
I don't see that, but I appreciate it. So how can people learn more about you and about your books?
They can simply go to cynthiaruchti.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. That's my website address. Ruchti is a tougher name to spell and even harder to pronounce, Ruchti, but they can also reach me through hemmedinhope.com. Those words are a little easier to spell. It will filter to the very same website. So my tagline is, I can't unravel, I'm hemmed in hope. And they can get to me then through hemmedinhope.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you for talking with me today and sharing your great wisdom and faith, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Always a joy. Always a pleasure.